Hello, one and all, and welcome to the Omnia Performance Podcast with Dr. Phil Price back in the building. We now have a building, actually. It's the first time he's actually been in this building recording podcasts, so you're back in a building, first time in this building. For those that don't know...
Not his first time in a building.
Yeah.
Not
feral. I'm the first person to achieve a PhD without ever going indoors.
Not much money in academia, so it makes sense.
Anyway, we've digressed before we even began. Phil, introduce and explain yourself.
Myself?
Who are you?
Rationalise yourself.
So, Dr. Phil Price. I've been teaching at St Mary's University for 14 years now. 14 years, Feb 1st, actually.
Oh, so you're a liar. 13 years and
13 years
11 months.
A lot. And I am the course lead for the Strength and Conditioning Masters Distance Learn. And my research interests are, which is where I come in with Omnia, I'm really looking into hybrid training, or certainly the combination of strength and endurance training from a research point of view. So that's a bit about me.
Very cool.
And we'll pull on that thread as time develops, because Phil has lots of very valuable opinions which are going to lean on him for today. So I'm Fergus Crawley. This is Jonny Payne.
Big Jonny P.
Okay, sorry. Big Jonny Payne. Anyway, what are we talking about today? Today is what actually is hybrid training. Big topic, convoluted topic on the interwebs at the moment, because it's become popular.
Because the interwebs are the interwebs.
Yes. Well, it's become more popular. We've always found it popular in our little circle, but it has become more of a buzzword, and that comes with discussions online. Yeah. Discussions which we don't tend to involve ourselves in much because, as you said, the interwebs are going to interweb. And yeah, we are very much in the camp, to lay out our stall, of wanting people to enjoy trying and developing themselves across new disciplines. And if the label concept of hybrid training is what allows them to do that, then we see no downsides to that whatsoever. We see a huge amount of value in the way that we train and the different disciplines that we've executed, and that is first and foremost the main thing. And there are a lot of camps on the internet shouting, hybrid training is just another label, how silly, when ultimately they participate in a label where the only difference is it's been around for longer, therefore people are more used to hearing the term. And for inclusivity to being the main thing in fitness, which I think it should be, these discussions where it becomes heated rather than interest and curiosity-led don't actually achieve much other than just egos bashing heads. So we really want today's discussion and the following 3 episodes we're going to record with Dr. Phil, whilst they might be titled a little bit provocatively, they're going to be very balanced, and I hope at this point that you can have faith in doing so. And if you come back at us hard on anything in a what's the word I'm looking for? What's the mutually non-proportional response, then we probably won't play ball. So we like discussions, we like conceptual thinking, we like open forums, we like crisps. Yeah, I
like crisps.
I like these electrolytes also. I'm going to have a sip just because I'm the only one with a prop.
These sips.
Anyway, that's the main point. The main point is we like fitness, and there's lots of labels within fitness. There's lots of marketing and commerciality within fitness, and anyone pretending that there isn't is lying or very ignorant. So these discussions often are just there to help align with the lane in which we see ourselves operating and the lane in which we have thousands of people all over the world seeing themselves operating within as well. And if those people are improving their lives, then we don't see that as any downside.
There's the crux of it, mate, is you got... The problem I've got with the internet arguments are kind of... It's ego-driven. I think you said that, didn't you?
I did, yep.
It's ego-driven, and it's driven by a kind of a personal bias and this need for people to own things, isn't it? It's not hybrid, it's this. Oh, it's not this, it's that. And the only reason they're really doing that, whether they realise it or not, certainly in my opinion, is because they don't want it to escape from them, and they don't want somebody else to have ownership of something that they feel they want ownership of. So it's not hybrid, it's fitness. It's not fitness, it's functional. It's not functional, it's this. It's not that, it's that. It's what I say it is because I'm the one that wants to own it and tell you that I'm the authority on it. All that does is shut doors for people. Because all you're doing is saying, unless you agree with me, you're doing it wrong. And then all people are going to hear at the other side of that is, well, I best align myself with this person because they shouted the loudest, or because they've got the most clicks and likes, or because they've got the most shares, or whatever Instagram tells you it makes a person important. And if I don't align myself with that individual, I am probably barking up the wrong tree, because a lot of people come to this industry or come into fitness trying to find a kind of a place for themselves. They're looking for a place for themselves in the world. They're trying to kind of find their tribe, which I think is really important for people, or find a community. And then what these people do is they kind of silo those communities off and say, well, this is the only community that actually has any merit. And in doing so, then they take things like, well, it's not hybrid. Hybrid isn't this. If you're doing hybrid, you're stupid. If you think hybrid is this and the next thing, that's because you don't know what I know. And all that is doing is, all that is reductionist and deleterious. And it removes what you said, it removes what you said at the very start of this, or it certainly negatively impacts the opportunity that people have to enter into fitness, to enter into these kind of personal pursuits without bias and just to bloody enjoy it.
Correct. Agreed. I was going to say creed. That's two words. Creed. Should start blasting creed out.
This is our creed.
Anyway, yeah, that is agreed. And I think it's important to really give some context at this point as to where the term originated from, where the methodology originated from, which is, long story short, Alex Viada started writing the book in 2013. Jonny, you had a huge amount of input on that process from a combat sport and trying to solve the same problems point of view. So you and Alex were very collaborative throughout that process. In 2015, that book was published, titled The Hybrid Athlete. 2015, key detail there for anyone thinking this is a new thing. It's been around for a long time just because it's become more prominent and sort of simmering to the top of the algorithm.
A decade at least. These arguments are about 6 months old now. So that tells you something, doesn't it?
That's the thing. Yeah, that is the thing. And essentially that book unpacks the methodology that underpins the distinction between hybrid training and concurrent training, which, Phil, you have a very good distinction on, don't you?
Well, I mean, concurrent training has been around for even longer.
Forever.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, when it comes to sport, they're going to need certain physical properties to do well in that sport. And quite often they'll need strength qualities, they'll need endurance qualities. I mean, the decathlon's been around for absolutely years, and they need various different qualities that involve strength and endurance components. So concurrent training has kind of been around for a long period of time. What I like about Alex's definition is that with hybrid training, someone is now actively trying to pursue and get better at two separate sports that appear quite different to each other. So you might have powerlifting and then, I don't know, half marathon running or something like that. So it isn't that you're trying to get strong and fit to be good at sport. You're trying to actively pursue and get better at a strength sport at the same time as getting better at an endurance sport. So this requires very, very different training towards it. Because if you think about other sports, which I guess have been labelled as hybrid, they do require strength and endurance components, but there's one output to it. You have to be good at rugby. I won't mention another name, but I think you know what I'm referring to here. But there's there is a single output that measures performance in that particular sport. With hybrid training, there's two particular outputs that means that you're better at sport. Like, you could say you're a hybrid athlete, but be really good at strength sports, absolutely terrible at particular endurance sport. But at the same time, you're trying to get better at it. So it doesn't necessarily matter that you might be poorer or better in one side. The idea is that you're trying to get better at both of them simultaneously.
And if that quote-unquote label is what gets that strength sports athlete to commit to improving themselves at running and gives them the confidence to do so, anyone that argues that that's a bad thing because it's a new term and I don't like it is missing the entire point of probably the reason that they got into the fitness industry in the first place, which is to help people improve.
I can see the overlap.
Yeah.
I need to get better at strength and endurance to get better at my sport. Yeah. I need to get better at strength and endurance to get better at two sports.
Yeah.
There's the difference.
So I think the nuance is set clear performance metric driven goals for the distinction to be there rather than it just being training for the sake of training, which again is kind of the difference between. This is where the age-old argument of, are you even a bodybuilder if you've competed? Are you even a powerlifter if you've stepped on a platform? All these things. And again, if people want to get stronger and actually pursue that and do that over time, then does it really matter if you've been on a platform or not? If you've got stronger, well done you. That's kind of the real nuance here. And I think it's important to underline the definition that Alex's definition that you referred to, which is the concurrent balance of training disciplines that do not inherently support one another and whose disparate components aren't essential to success at any one sport, which is, in simple terms, training for progression in 2 or more separate sports that do not directly make you better at the other. So, using the examples that you gave, a rugby player will focus on strength and endurance components to make them better on a rugby pitch. That is therefore sort of funneling towards the progression of being a better rugby player. Yes, there will be byproducts in the form of more strength, more endurance, but it's the direction in which that's being channeled that sort of makes the distinction where that's strength conditioning for a specific sport and is a concurrent training methodology that's moving them towards that better goal, which is being a better rugby player. In the same way that if you are doing aerobic conditioning to improve your recovery between powerlifting sets or to improve your recovery between functional fitness events, for example, then that's kind of making you a better functional fitness or a better, it's making you better in that sport as a primary goal. If you're then saying, right, I want to improve my marathon time and get stronger on a powerlifting platform, or in a gym, I want to test my SBD in 12 months' time, then setting clear goals to progress in those 2 separate disciplines, you then need to actually look at your training and apply a methodology that allows you to progress in both simultaneously, rather than having the running support the lifting and rather than having the lifting support the running. You're trying to balance the progression of the 2 separately. And that's where the distinction comes in. And again, even feeling forced to have this discussion because we've had a lot of people request it from us recently is we think reductive of the reason in which this was created, which was to reduce the barrier to entry for people to try things that they thought they couldn't do because I am a powerlifter, I am a runner, I can't do X or Y because my triathlon coach said, no way, you can't touch a barbell, you can't do any heavy weights, even if that person might have wanted to lift some heavy weights. The bottom line here is that 99.9% of us listening that train recreationally do not want to be the best or have no desire to be the best at our sport in the world. And that means that curiosity, fun, enjoyment, and self-development should be the guiding principles and metrics that we hold ourselves accountable to. And if certain labels, quote unquote, unlock that ability for the individual, great news.
So I fully agree with all of that. The tracking back, while we're talking, I'm kind of thinking, how did I come across this kind of process and the methodology and things? And Alex and I met at the same time as he was writing the book and had those conversations, and our coming together of minds was based on the fact that we're both going, yes, that's what I'm trying to do. So for me though, we know his background there was pulling 700-800 pounds off the floor, but also wanting to, I think he took part in a 5K and was humbled and then decided he wanted to train for something like that and realised he was overwhelming his training program, and now we need to have something more methodologically intelligent in order to maintain these 2 very disparate components. For me, we can go back to early 2000s when I was working with almost exclusively combat athletes, and we've got guys in the gym who I was beating, and this is when I was coaching and training and fighting, so I'm beating guys who were much more technically proficient or had better aerobic capacity than I, because I was stronger. And so as a coach, I'm saying, I'm working with guys and realizing the gap in their game might be strength. So then I come across, certainly in boxing, had a big argument all the time with people where I'm saying, you need to be stronger. If you want to win this fight against this guy, you need to apply a certain amount of strength. And what you get was pushback from the technical coaches, kind of old school coaches, which still happens, where they're saying, well, we don't want to make him slower. And say, well, you don't have to make him slower. We just have to program intelligently so that this fella or lass can get stronger and apply that strength in that combat sports situation. No, Johnny, if we push that strength envelope further forward, then we're going to lose out on the aerobic capacity that this fella's got, etc., etc. So what we had was these, what Alex and I called obligate hybrid athletes who have to work disparate components, but actually have to progressively work them at the same time, fighting against the idea that this could be possible because they didn't want to lose their gains. It's the same thing. So I was not in that world where people were talking about losing their gains. I don't want to do any cardio because I'm trying to build my muscle. I was working with athletes who were afraid of strength training because what it would take away from their technical capability and their ability to maintain a 12-round fight in boxing. And was developing intelligently, developed a methodology, looked at that process and managed to speak to some of the coaches who allowed me to kind of tinker with things, and we could get them stronger without them losing that capability. We could get them stronger whilst actually progressing their aerobic capacity. Fast forward maybe, I don't know, 8 or 9 years, early 2010 perhaps, I was working with a weightlifter, a really excellent weightlifter who qualified for the British squad, and would sometimes get miserable during training. You know, we're doing very specific weightlifting work, and you know, anybody who knows weightlifting knows how technically charged that whole process is. But she would get upset because we worked in a gym in an arena where there were a lot of sprinters and a lot of endurance athletes and a lot of people doing endurance-based sports, and literally had her nose pressed against the window looking at these people saying, I wish I could do that too. You know, and I was saying, well, why don't you do that too? Well, I don't want to lose what I've got at the weightlifting. We haven't got the time to concentrate on that and concentrate on this. So there's this other conundrum where I'm looking at this girl who really had the capability, had the build. Anthropometrically, she was in a good position to do both things, but was afraid of the idea that I could provide her with the opportunity to maybe run a half marathon or a marathon at the same time as weightlifting. And all it required was a little bit of faith on her part and a little bit of tinkering again and playing with the methodology and allowing this opportunity for her to continue to become stronger, to continue to become more technically proficient, but also develop a massive aerobic capacity in the background to perhaps pursue some aerobic endeavour. And for me, that's where this hybrid methodology was brought out, because we had an elite level weightlifter who wanted to do endurance sports. Can we actually push that envelope and allow her to do endurance sports? She'd have to take a long time to become elite level at that too. But she didn't want to get out there and run these races and feel stupid doing it. She wanted to be competitive in her age group, in her weight class and all that kind of stuff, and did so. So this was born out of this methodology and trying to kind of produce a process where we could look at these very, very disparate elements of programming and have somebody who can excel, not lose that ability. She didn't have to say, do you know what, I'm more enamored now with the idea of marathon running, so I am going to have to give up weightlifting. We're like, no, you don't have to do that. And what's more, if you fancy it, we could also train you to run through that wall at any given moment. You know, and that was the excitement for me, was this girl suddenly had the opportunity to do all the things that she wanted to do, and went on to do very, very different things. I think she now does a bit of BJJ, as well as keeping a huge capacity in these other two elements. So that's hybrid. And that's where that was born for me. We were talking early 2010, and then developed that process, met Alex. He's written a book, and then it's become bastardized. Well, it hasn't, because what we're doing and what we're saying and what we're actually trying to tell people they can do is that opportunity to say, well, I don't want to be stuck just doing this one thing. I don't want to have to push my nose against the window and kind of cry and say, well, one day I would like to run, or I could have ran, that would have been fun too. And I say, well, do those things. You don't have to give up your career as a weightlifter. You can do those things. You might have to take a little hit. You might have to look at a longer runway, but we can still progress in both. And that's something that was really exciting to me, because it was something I was tinkering with for myself as an athlete as well, but it was something that was very, very exciting to me, that we could then say to anybody that came to us, yes, you can do all the things. Yep. Isn't that the magic of training?
100%. And I think what has forced this discussion is the social media buzzwordery around the term hybrid athlete, which the most entertaining thing about this is that a lot of the people shouting the loudest against the buzzwordery of it don't see the irony that 10 years ago the word functional would have been under the exact same scrutiny, and every argument that's being made against the word hybrid could be applied verbatim by replacing it with the word functional. But because functional is more developed as a methodology and has become more accommodated, they're ignoring that bias and not seeing past the same thing, which is ultimately, if this is a gateway for more people to try new things in a new way and they feel comfortable attaching a label to that, all power to them. And you arguing against that, trying to nitpick here, nitpick there on exactly the same premise, in many ways, all you're doing is removing that power from the individual to progress and develop in their own lives in whatever sporting disciplines they would like to make progress in simultaneously.
Yeah, it's this kind of myopic viewpoint that shuts doors for people. It shuts down opportunities. It shuts down progression, because they, again, as I said at the very beginning, people want to own it, and in doing so, they shut themselves off. Another good example or a good example of that with the functional stuff. When Phil and I have had this discussion a few times, when I was pugnaciously arguing with the UKSCA about where kind of aerobic conditioning would fit with the strength work, basically trying to argue, before it was called hybrid, trying to argue a hybrid methodology. One of the things that I put in, when you do these tests and assessments, you have to write and rationalize an entire program for an elite level athlete. So I wrote it for an MMA athlete and had bicep curls in it, and was almost laughed out the arena. Why would you put bicep curls in? And the UKSCA were saying this is not functional. And so we had this big discussion about, well, what's functional? You've just taken a word and applied it to whatever you feel suits the word now, which is what people are doing with hybrid. And my argument was, okay, tell somebody being rear naked choked simply by the power of a bicep curl. Once that's in, if you've got strong biceps, that's going in harder. Explain that to somebody being choked out. This is not functional. This is as functional as it gets. You're being strangled, mate. So the point of that little kind of detour there is that, you can take that word and apply it to whatever bloody hell you like, but all you're doing is shutting off the process to apply it to something else. And it's the same with hybrid now. Is that you can say, well, hybrid's only this because I said so. And you're like, well, but now you've missed the wood for the trees. And now you've shut the doors for your own progression, and you shut the doors for the progression of your own athletes, because you consider hybrid to be something you want to gatekeep and own. Now you're fucking it up for everyone, which is what they were doing with bicep curls. There's nothing wrong with bicep curls. They're functional as hell.
I love bicep curls.
Yeah, they're very functional.
Yeah. It'd be good to get your take on this, because I definitely see, and this probably happens with most words, and probably happened with the word functional, but there was kind of a cultural shift, especially around the introduction of social media. And then I think it was accelerated since, obviously, when we were in lockdown, where certain things become valuable, like a word or definition. So that's why people try and chase it or move things around so they can apply it to what they do, so then they can use that to gain attention. And that could be then utilized in various ways. And I think hybrid has really accelerated recently because the catchment areas is just grown massively. I think we've got to a point where a lot of people would play rugby, they'd play football, they'd play a variety of different sports, and then those people are retiring and they're like, I still want to remain competitive. What can I do? Well, I want to do a bit of everything. So all of a sudden we've got a lot of people, more people playing sport into their late, years and stuff like that. So the amount of people who are playing sport and have the option to play multiple sports has increased. Yeah. So that's very attractive to people. So if you can sort of like manipulate certain words to try and make people think, well, that links to what I want, come to me, that's why the word hybrid has become so attractive. And then even though I think it was well defined by Alex back in 2013. 2013, give or take. Yeah, it's now been bastardized since then. Like there was a clear distinction of what he meant by using that word, and now we've had this cultural shift where yes, there's more of a catchment area, people doing that. We're also seeing more and more people join things together. This might not be in sport, but they're joining things together to create something new, to find their niche so they can then put that on social media. So hybrid in general is just people trying to find their own niche by adding things. And that's how things develop culturally, isn't it? Culturally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's just been accelerated by a number of different events, and that's why we're kind of here now. I've also noticed that with the word hybrid, I don't know, some of the arguments that I've seen online, it's, well, this sport's the hardest, therefore it's more hybrid. Like hybrid is a measure of intensity or difficulty. Yeah. So I've never really understood that. It's not like who is the most hybrid. It's like
it's a misnomer to say I'm more hybrid.
You're a great
CrossFit
athlete. You're a great Hyrox athlete. You're a great hybrid athlete. They're just different sports. Or
there's no measure of who is the best, what is the best, and I think that's the beauty of it. But there are a lot of people trying to make those claims or try and align those things when it's a sort of it's.
Well, that's it. I am
there's no way
hybrid
of
athlete,
connecting,
and there are people saying that.
Yeah, there are people saying that. Yeah,
say, well,
on TikTok mainly.
Yeah, but by what measure?
Mine. Yeah.
I'm the greatest Johnny Payne. That's a fact.
You don't know that. There is
Don't
actually,
know
you know,
that.
there is,
I don't
you
mean
know,
that.
there is
That was the
actually, there is actually an American
There
called
is,
Johnny Payne that
I
does
was invited
SMC
on
stuff.
a podcast and then they realised it was the wrong Johnny Payne. I went on the podcast and probably did better, but there you go.
There's a Phil Price that did golf. Isn't it Phil Price the third? Something like that.
The third?
There you go.
Which
No,
one
that
are
might
you?
have been it. Surely the first.
So the point of I am the best Johnny Payne, the nonsense there is that, by whose
No one-
definition,
but also-
by my, I've just made that up.
but
By my
also,
definition. So you're just
no
saying
one-
something.
No
Who's-
one gives a fuck, mate.
Nobody gives a fuck. Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with it. Who gives a fuck anyway?
Yeah.
You've made that argument for the sake of yourself.
If you're doing these
Something
things for that reason, you've failed already.
Well, this comes back to the ego
Yeah.
thing and all the rest of it. And something the point that you were making there was excellent. Is that what we're kind of keen. Anybody watching this or listening to it will sense the frustration or the aggravation, and that's not because we feel. I mean, we've no right to feel it anyway. It's not.
Yep.
We didn't say it in the first place. But I've already described the fact that I was trying to do these things before Alex managed to give it a kind of a name. But when we're not gripping this or holding on to it because we feel like it's moving out of our grasp, what we're doing, and you made the point excellently there, is it's great that it's taken off. It's great that it's become something that people are attaching themselves to. It's great that ultimately what we do see from a really positive perspective is that the word hybrid is bringing more people into fitness. It's allowing people to say, well, I don't have to be pigeonholed. I don't have to do just this one thing. By definition, some of those people are just applying the word hybrid because it's a sales tool, because it allows them the opportunity to kind of get more likes and hashtag and all that kind of stuff. There is a slight frustration there. You're like, well, what are you bloody using that word for? It doesn't make any sense. At the same time, we don't need to gatekeep that. But what I'm most frustrated about, in fact, we don't want to gatekeep it. We'd rather it proliferated and allowed more and more people to open those doors to fitness and open those doors to that whole spread of fitness. I don't have to just do this one thing. So, use it as much as you want. Get it out there. Please do that. What I'm personally aggravated, only to speak for myself, is where people are shutting it down and saying hybrid is a negative thing. It's a stupid thing. It's just fitness. You're a moron if you're saying hybrid. What are you saying hybrid for? All this kind of stuff. All that is that's the reductionist bit. Is that it's no different, as you've just said, for people X amount of years ago saying, if you're saying functional, you're a fucking moron.
Yeah.
If you're treating functional fitness as the way through fitness, you're just another throw in the fucking bag coach. And coaches went through that for a long time, came out the other end proud of the fact that they stood by their methodology. Yet those same coaches are kind of willing to attack another methodology based on the fact that they don't like the fact that it's escaping them. You're like, hey, listen, come one, come all. If you're gonna argue your own corner, if you're gonna argue your own oppression, then it's on you to argue somebody else's oppression with them, as opposed to saying, right, it's positive racism, isn't it? It's outrageous to then sit back and let another person be attacked and be part of that attack, which was very similar to the attack that you had, which was just shutting down fitness. You should be trying to push it forward.
The inherent hypocrisy that goes with trying to shut down the concept of hybrid training through the lens of CrossFit or functional fitness is enormous, because essentially the whole reason that CrossFit and functional fitness was created in the first place was to broaden and widen the reach of the inclusivity of fitness in and of itself. And whilst that has now developed into a business, into a competitive arena, and a real community that's fantastic in and of itself.
Wonderful community.
The hypocrisy of looking at the current and being ignorant of the past, given that that same community has gone through the exact same evolution and the same scrutiny originally, is inherently hypocritical of the community in which you find yourself.
Yeah, it's
and is actually working directly against the premise by which that community was created. If you are in the camp of loving CrossFit, loving functional fitness, and you are trying to shut down a completely verifiable methodology that a lot of people might not actually understand the origins of and just see the buzzwordry on social media currently, then you are working directly against the original premise by which the community you see yourself as a part of was created for the intention of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what irks me the most. Is again, we can't get what we are very passionate about is making sure that people don't get sucked into believing that what they're doing is invalid because somebody on the internet disagreed with them, but rather encouraging people to find their own niches you've described with the sports that they would like to pair that do not complement one another, and to enjoy the experience of figuring that out. And I don't often do this,
You know, it reminds me of-
but I am
sorry.
going to do it once.
What's that?
Dave Castro, the ideal CrossFit athlete, would be able to squat 500 pounds and run a sub 5-minute mile in the same day. Interesting, is all I'll say. Interesting. Because loads of Oh no, they haven't, have they? Oh, yeah. Sorry, that was...
Yeah.
It's a 50%
But
split.
they could.
They could, yeah, if maybe they applied a little bit more hybrid methodology.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact they're being forced to do that, because that feels very non-British and non-Fergus, but I've been driven to this point because essentially I'm passionate about the results that we've seen from the people we look after. The personal reward I have gone through and experienced in finding this methodology and living through it myself, coming from a very negative place in the past, has fucking changed my life. So for marketing, buzzwordery and bullshit to get in the way of other people having that opportunity, I think is actually insulting to the inclusivity mission that people should be on with fitness in the first place.
Yep.
So
Can't say fairer than that, mate.
I'm gonna exit the conversation now.
No, you don't
Because
need to.
I think I have nothing else to say on the
You have
topic
to
for the
drop
time
that.
being.
Just throw it on the floor. And
Yeah, no,
then we'll walk out.
No,
Drop it. You have to lift it up first.
it's just one for the sake of time because we need to get you on a flight, Phil. But I think we don't want to be too laborious on this point and get sucked in too much because we just want to. All we're trying to do is underline the way that we see it. We don't want to go tit for tat on too many things. But if people are trying to tit for tat, then we'd like to just make a stance so that other people understand the opportunity is out there to develop.
It's worth underlining what you're saying. It's worth saying that we don't want to get involved in tit for tat. And I guess what you were kind of hesitant about there was just throwing in a big tat. I don't want to be this is my punch, and you're like, shit. I thought we weren't getting involved in the fight. But it's sometimes you got to stamp your feet or shout loud enough to make people hear you. The way off the pace. The analogy that was buzzing around in my head a minute ago about the irony of the functional thing and the arguments and the bringing hybrid down was, I guess it speaks to my interests, is for years and years hip hop was argued against. It was like, this is not an art form, this is not music, this is a load of bollocks, and you think, hold on, aren't you also artists? Isn't this also music? Isn't this something you should be involved in? Yet years down the line, hip hop, a fully established art form. Then you've got hip-hop artists who argue against grime being a bona fide art form, or jungle at the time. This is a load of bollocks. You're just bastardizing what we've got. And you're like, wait a minute, isn't this just another art form? Aren't you now doing what was done to you? And this is the same thing with the functional stuff. It's the hybrid's a load of bollocks. It's not proper training. It's not nothing. And do you know what it is? It's just functional fitness repackaged, or it's just CrossFit. Hold on, haven't you just listened to a slightly different? Or a very different, couldn't you be excited that you've been part of the origin? Isn't this just another art form that you're now pulling down the same as somebody tried to pull your art form down? Come on, do better.
And an evolution that your community has gone through in the past.
And an evolution you should support, because this is the whole point. The evolution brings more people to the point where they can listen to the music. So just do better.
It's a great analogy, that.
I like it.
I think if you got everyone involved in...
Very good, yes.
You've got everyone involved who is discussing the word hybrid, got them in a room and actually got them to discuss, what is hybrid to you. I think we noticed that people probably have more in common with it than you would think if you looked online, and then probably end of it will go, we just love training. Do you want to go train? Yeah, right.
Exactly.
It's such a shame.
It's just training. Let's just have some fun.
And that's what I hope our point.
This is not proper running.
Yeah.
Shut up. Let's just go for a run.
Yeah. So it's a shame, but I wonder what the next word will be.
Yep.
If it was functional, now hybrid, what's the next word?
And
let's
I say
predict.
again, most of the people, most of the people,
mumble rap. No, I'm the wrong analogy. Sorry.
You've got music in your head, haven't you?
most of the people shouting the loudest against this are leveraging the buzzwordery for their own marketing purposes, which says all that needs to be said.
Yeah. If your real fly is well done, what did it give you though?
I think we'll draw a line under that there. mainly for the sake of time. But if anyone has any questions or counter arguments, you're more than welcome to provide them. But again, if it's not balanced and sort of nuanced and considerate of the wider things at play, then we probably won't bother engaging, because we like to have discussions, not bashing heads together from an egotistical point of view. And if that means that we disagree, that's absolutely fine. And we are happy and encourage you to keep doing what you do that is enjoyable to you.
Yeah.
As ultimately, fitness is bloody brilliant, and it's evolved massively over the years. So anyone that's in that community as an overarching package should be very happy. In the same way that runners bashing triathletes and triathletes bashing runners has been going on for years.
Stop it.
But that doesn't mean that running is bad or triathlon is bad. And in fact, people are probably better off for having done either or. So let's just all grin, put our thumbs up, and say, thanks for listening. See you next time.
Bye.